On 3 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I think it's unheard of in my experience that no one will take carriage of a non-member's motion, even as a courtesy, even if they're not going to vote for it. I've never seen that before. I'm here as Chair of the Board of Health to address some of our programs that we either operate or administer, which are not part of our core services, but very much reflect the core values of Torontonians. The first of those that I'll talk about, and others have spoken very passionately and eloquently about all of these programs, and I only have time to summarize them, but we provide essential dental care for seniors and children who can't afford these services otherwise. These programs existed in part pre-amalgamation in Toronto, North York, and in Etobicoke, and were one of the few things that got ramped up after amalgamation. I talked to one of our dentists last week and said, "Give me an idea of who you've seen today." And she said, "Well, I saw a child who had 8 cavities in their mouth, some of them so infected that I had to do some extractions." And she said, "I saw some seniors with mouths so sore that they were unable to eat, and the condition of their teeth were affecting their health." And I think these are programs that are very near and dear to Torontonians. They're the types of programs that you provide in a compassionate society. They have a tradition in the city of Toronto, and I hope somebody will make a motion today to make it clear that these programs are not up for elimination and relieve any anxiety anyone might have about those. The student nutrition programs, you heard lots of people speak very passionately about those. Again, the same thing. Those are very dear to Torontonians. They're part of our tradition. I don't think anyone wants to see children go to school, start their school day hungry, and that's what would otherwise happen. And we have the AIDS and drug prevention grants, which KPMG should have liked because they are in effect outsourced. But instead of outsourcing them to people who are remote from the process, which is a normal way outsourcing is done, they are outsourced to community agencies and groups who are very familiar. They're much more familiar with the clientele and are able to deal with those programs very effectively. By the way, with those programs, we do have a plan within public health that we can dramatically reduce the cost of those to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matlow, 3 minutes.
Well, I still think it's such a shame that this council is so polarized over a simple issue, should be a simple issue, about how to arrive at a reasonable resolution to balance our budget. Aside from a lot of the divisions, the right and left rhetoric that keeps on intruding and distracting from congenial and positive discussions, what we have in common is simple. We all believe that it's important to review our finances and our services, but we want to do it well, and we want to do it thoughtfully. And I've still never understood why we haven't looked at the efficiencies and the user fees and potential cuts that might be reasonable, along with, frankly, an adult and mature conversation about new sources of revenue concurrently at the same time so we can figure out a solution that works. Not dramatic, not radical, but something reasonable that works. I also know that every one of my colleagues, while we're having these debates that take a lot of the focus away from this place, are doing remarkable work in their wards. Each councillor here, whether they be left or right or centre, is doing remarkable work in their communities that I know will be reflected in their votes ultimately when we decide on the budget. I don't believe for a moment that the most divisive, the most seemingly draconian cuts that are on the table will ultimately see the light of day, because I actually don't believe that any single member sitting here or at any seat in the council chambers wants to do what has been proposed. Some might vote for some cuts because they believe it's the only thing left to do. some because they don't believe that the province or federal government will end up covering what they really do, rightfully have a purview in funding. But not a single member here actually wants to cut the vast majority of proposals that have come forward. And I do believe that if we work together collegially, supportively, and respectfully, we will find a reasonable middle ground that is thoughtful and works for the people of Toronto. Now, it depends if we put that energy towards that goal. I believe that if we do that, if we stop we get distracted by a lot of silly rhetoric. We really do. And it embarrasses us all. It isn't good for us. The last thing I'd submit to you all is that if we can balance this budget, finally deal with the structural deficit that has plagued the city for years, and help the city run better, the mayor wins, each councillor wins, but more importantly, every single resident of the city is going to win. And I know that all of us are going to work together to see this important goal through to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mahavik, 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. A few comments. First, I do want to comment on the weakness of this process. For us to go basically 24 hours, to sleep deprive us, to sleep deprive residents, to have heard of 344 deputants, knowing that 153 were not able to stay, I think, frankly, is a disrespect of the process, of the democracy that we are trying to build here. And I think the appropriate process would have been to break, to give us a little time to sleep, and then come back and finish the work today, Friday. The question I think that we need to really respond, especially seeing that we have still a lot of folks from the public here, is like, what did we hear? We had 13,000 online surveys. We had a whole host of emails. We had deputations today, yesterday. We had deputations at different standing committees. What are we hearing? And, I went into this process thinking, you know what? I bet you we're going to hear a lot of division. There'll be Ford Nation and those who have a different vision. And you know what? I think, frankly, if we really think about it for a second, this city is pretty united. If this is a reflection, if this was a good process of hearing from our residents, you know what? I don't think 3 people yesterday and today, and certainly at Community Services, said that they want these dramatic cuts, that they believe in values that want to diminish community services. I thought that we would be hearing all this about all these taxes that we pay, and we want small government, we want to just cut the size of local government. I thought we'd be hearing a lot about the me, yet we heard a lot about the we. I thought we'd maybe hear a lot more about us as individuals, but I heard a lot of us talk, most of us, the vast majority of people talk about us as community. And, I thought we'd hear a lot about money in my pocket, and I heard a lot about the quality of life for us all as residents. I didn't recognize the City of Toronto after the election. I'm starting to recognize that Toronto that is about passion and hope and building community, I think is still there. But you know what? I say this to the deputants. Today is the beginning. You have to talk to your friends. You have to talk to your neighbors. You have to talk to people you don't talk to build that vision even more. And I expect on September the 19th, given this kind of feedback, that the city manager's report reflects the opinions that have come forward.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bailao, 3 minutes.
Okay. I would really like to start by thanking everybody that spent almost 24 hours here. I want to thank staff, and I want to thank all of my colleagues, the ones that had to stay because they were part of the executive, and the ones that stayed because we wanted to listen and hear from everybody. A lot of people came up to me and said, "Why are you here? You don't have to be here." And I said, "I want to hear from you. I want to learn from you. I'm a young, new counselor, and this has been an amazing experience." But I truly believe that the mayor, when he invited people to come here, he also wanted to hear. There's no question we have a structural problem in our deficit. There's no question we need to address it, but we need to address it by addressing our revenue and by addressing our efficiencies. That's what we heard clear and loud here today. And there's things in the report that are not an option, that should not be in this report. They're part of our core service. And I hope that the executive, and I truly believe that the executive and the mayor will take this in consideration when they're looking at all the options. Because there is no gravy on how we grow our children. There is no gravy on how we educate our children. There is no gravy on how we make sure that we have healthy children, because cities are made up of people, not roads and buildings. And that's what we have to make sure we keep in mind when we do this budget. It's about people, it's not about buildings and roads. And I hope that we all just keep that in mind.
Councillor Vaughan.
Many years ago, someone said that Toronto was New York run by the Swiss. I think if we were to follow KPMG's advice, we'd end up as a town that was sort of run by what's left of Lehman Brothers, with a bit of help from Anderson Consulting and technical support provided by Enron. You know, Councillor Shiner has left, but he hit the nail on the head with the question he asked of the city manager. 2% inflation creates a 10% property tax pressure. It's a structural problem. It's not ideological. Life happens. Costs go up. And the city isn't built to handle a modern economy. It's a problem. The mayor framed this as a debate about what's nice to have and what we must have. I'll tell you what we need. We need it badly. We need a strategy. We need a vision. We need a budget. And instead, we're getting slogans, platitudes, accusations, generalizations, what an old English teacher of mine used to call just plain dull truths. And then, when we run out of those ideas, and the mayor's office has a responsibility to present a budget, what we get is a city that wants to hide behind consultants' reports and strategists, and media strategy, and we end up with the information in front of us that can be best described as either inaccurate or incomplete, clearly incoherent, and verges on incompetency. And we wonder why at the end of 24 hours, we're directionless again. It's time for the mayor to present a budget. His budget. It's his job. And then we can take it back into our communities. We can have the conversations, perhaps not in 24 hours, but how to over 24 days, with the folks who we represent and the businesses we represent. And then perhaps we can come back here and have the rational conversation on the common ground instead of the battleground. But until that happens, we're in big trouble. Mark Twain once said, "One man alone can be pretty dumb, but for real bona fide stupidity, it takes teamwork." It's the executive's turn to talk about it now.
No other